Lies of P, a Bloodborne clone starring the brutal Pinocchio, is in full swing preparing for release. The game was announced back in 2021, but the full gameplay was shown only recently. For a long time it seemed that the new product, against the background of the original FromSoftware project, had nothing to surprise with. 3 gameplay and 1 story trailers prove that this opinion is wrong. Today we know some details of the plot and features of the combat system. We will discuss them in this video. Thank you for subscribing to the RTV Gaming channel so as not to miss new videos. Lies of P is a rethinking of the famous fairy tale about Pinocchio. The developers said that they were inspired by the very first version of the story, which was distinguished by a gloomy tone of the narrative and cruelty unusual for a children's book. In addition, Pinocchio visits many locations. He was even swallowed by a huge shark. In the trailers, however, they show only one city, but what if a huge boss fish also appears? It is known that the main theme of the game will be a lie and its consequences. Traveling through Krat, the city where events unfold, the player will meet a variety of characters. Some of them, of course, will have tasks for the hero. In the process, Pinocchio will sometimes be able to choose whether to lie or tell the truth. The consequences of such decisions will affect the plot and ending. From earlier trailers, it turned out that a plague is raging in the city, but the creators do not disclose the causes of the disease. It also remains a question where the evil puppets came from, and why Pinocchio himself looks like an ordinary guy, but with an iron prosthesis. At the beginning of the story, or the whole game, we will be looking for Geppetto, Pinocchio's father. The kind old man even appeared in the trailer, which indicates his important role in the plot. There is a falseness in the image and behavior of the father. Given the main theme of the project, it would be logical if the father turns out to be a villain. The fairy with blue hair also lit up. The trailer gives the impression that the girl and Geppetto are 2 opposing forces, the main goal of which will be to attract the boy to their side. Another detail is a group of people wearing animal masks and carrying a coffin that says liar. In the original tale, there were rabbits preparing a personal box for Pinocchio, who did not want to drink his medicine. In the game, the characters look very menacing. Interestingly, they wear the same attachments on their hands as the hero himself wears on his prosthesis. Perhaps, after a series of false elections, the main character will be hunted down. But why and by whom? Unknown. The plot of Lies of P looks like the most mysterious part of the project. This is A+, because an unusual look at fairy tale characters' intrigues gives hope for an interesting story. The gameplay will feel familiar to anyone who has ever played Souls-likes, and especially Bloodborne. Pinocchio slowly walks along the Krat, methodically carving out puppets, opening chests and periodically dying. Instead of bonfires, there are unusual devices that are literally called the stargazers, and souls have been replaced with ergo substance. Fortunately, this is not all that the game has to offer. The combat system has been seriously upgraded. In addition to an iron prosthesis with various attachments, Pinocchio has a whole arsenal of edged weapons, and each one can be assembled with your own hands. From enemies you will receive not only ready-made sabers and axes, but also spare parts, hilts, blades, tips. If you want to combine the sharp part of a heavy spear with an axe handle, please. We decided to disassemble the sword and make something new out of it, no problem. Although it is not yet clear how wide the opportunities for crafting will be. In the demonstration, it is noticeable that not all handles are suitable for the selected tip. Interestingly, after assembly, during the game, you will always see both components. This means the presence of such a parameter as strength. One of the pop-up tutorials revealed that with a successful parry, there is a chance to break enemy weapons. If Pinocchio can do it, obviously so can opponents. Parry seems to be one of the main combat mechanics. In the commercials, the hero now and then repels the attacks of the puppets. Without equipment, the damage and protection of enemies is drastically reduced. Does this mean that bosses can only be defeated through parries, like in Sekiro, shadows die twice? It is not yet clear. The second important feature will be the prosthesis. You can attach various attachments to it, which seriously affect the battle. So far, only 4 options have been demonstrated: electric, incendiary, sniper and harpoon. The latter, in our opinion, is especially interesting. At the beginning, Pinocchio can pull small enemies towards him, but after leveling up, he is able to pull himself towards them. The closest analog to what is happening will be Final Fantasy XV, when Prince Noctis flew over the battlefield, teleporting to the magic sword. One more conclusion follows from this: the equipment has pumping. The skill tree of Pinocchio himself was not shown, but if each nozzle has several development options, the scope for combinations is huge. The fly in the ointment is that it is impossible to customize the prosthesis on the go. Only when you get to the next bonfire, you can change the equipment and rebuild weapons. Pinocchio is by default quite mobile, so he can both jump to the side and roll fully. In this case, players will have a choice of path, balance, agility or power. Apparently, this decision will have to be made at the very beginning of the game. Ergo Hero collects in a special lamp on his belt. It's funny that the object talks to the boy from time to time, but who is sitting inside is a mystery. Pinocchio will have a weight indicator forgotten by Souls fans. By default, the guy will be able to drag 76.4 kilograms. This decision seems to be controversial. For the sake of greater variability, FromSoftware has long abandoned such hardcore restrictions. In the recent Elden Ring, by the middle of the passage, the hero could easily arm a small army. It turns out that in Lies of P you will have to constantly sell equipment. At the same time, the weight of the weapon in the hands for Pinocchio does not seem to matter at all. In addition to the usual health and stamina bar, the guy has a super strike scale. When fighting, Pinocchio can use his gauge to unleash many quick strikes and break his opponent's defenses. At these moments, the hero begins to glow with a bluish light. Evil puppets, by the way, also know how, but they turn red. It is impossible to block enhanced attacks, only to dodge. It is not yet clear whether filling the scale affects the type of attack, but the type of weapon definitely matters. In several shots in the trailers, Pinocchio was wielding a heavy sword, and the special attacks were very different. Evil puppets, by the way, also know how, but they turn red. It is impossible to block enhanced attacks, only to dodge. It is not yet clear whether filling the scale affects the type of attack, but the type of weapon definitely matters. In several shots in the trailers, Pinocchio was wielding a heavy sword, and the special attacks were very different. Unfortunately, all the advantages of Lies of P may not be enough. The main enemies in both trailers and gameplay demos were puppets. Despite their variety, many of the animations are painfully reminiscent of the movements of the townspeople from Bloodborne. There is no friendly fire in the game either. All attacks and projectiles of opponents are completely ignored by their counterparts, which looks at least strange. The release of the game is scheduled for 2023, so there is still hope for a solution to the problem. Traditionally inconvenient camera in place. Pinocchio regularly finds himself in a situation where half of the enemies are simply out of sight. Bugs complete the list. It's worth mentioning that the game is not yet ready, so the situation will change for sure, but it's difficult not to be annoyed by what is happening so far. Enemies teleport, hits don't count, not to mention parry timings. We really hope that these are only temporary problems and the game will get rid of them by the release. Despite the seeming secondary nature, Lies of P captivates with its original setting, nice picture and smart combat system. And yet, the game has a lot from Bloodborne, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice and a number of other well-known projects. Will Lies of P become another faceless Souls clone, or will it take its place among the coolest games in the genre? We'll find out in 2023 on PC, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X/S.